I will say that to you guys, if you're watching this and if you're in that low place, it's temporary. Allow that place to make you into who you are to become. Don't allow your current situation to define who you are. Allow that to make you into who you're going to be, because that's what we all need. We need the process. We need the process. Diamonds look like coal at first.
Artists, musicians, and creatives of all kinds. Looking for help balancing your passion to create with your everyday life? Not sure if your faith can coexist with your profession? Welcome to a place where real artists discuss real life. You're listening to The God and Gig Show. Visit godandgigs.com for show notes, links, and more information.
Hello, and thanks so much for making this podcast a part of your creative day. It's an honor to speak to you and to be a part of your creative journey in whichever form you decide that is, if that's to help you with your inspiration, your faith, to help you with some practical tools to get you moving in terms of your music business or your creative business, whatever you're working on in the God and Gigs world, we try to cover those bases. And I appreciate you giving us the chance to share some stuff with you today. My name is Alan C. Paul. If you're new to the show, I am the host. I'm a creative coach, and I'm the author of the books, God and Gigs, Succeed as a Musician Without Sacrificing Your Faith, as well as our devotional, Your Art, God's Heart. Both of those books can be found at our website, godandgigs.com/books, as well as all online bookstores. And speaking of books, our guest today is an author as well. He's just released a new book called 10 Ways to Success, The Working Musician. And he's going to be sharing not just about that new book, but about all of the amazing wisdom he's gathered over the last, I guess, say decades in the music industry. I'm talking about musician, producer, author, speaker, and entrepreneur Jermaine Morgan. Jermaine Morgan is an incredible mind. He has worked with the best as a performer, as a producer, as a musical director in one of the largest churches in America, one of the most prolific churches in terms of music in America that he was a musical director of for years. He'll talk about that in this interview. He'll talk about how his humble beginnings in Mississippi became the catalyst for him to become what he calls an all-in entrepreneur when it comes to music, being able to build an incredible library of videos and teaching materials on bass on his website. He'll talk about that as well. And really how his entire mentality got him through the worst times of his life. I don't want to take a long time explaining the interview because he gave us so much value and so many things that are going to inspire you that I want to get right to it. So without any further delay, please check this out and listen to the entire episode. Don't skip anything. Trust me on this. Here's our talk with Jermaine Morgan. Jermaine Morgan, welcome to the God and Gig Show. How are you?
Man, I'm great. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my honor, man, and a pleasure. Again, I do the deep dive. I do the stalking each time I do one of these interviews. Yeah, you laugh, but we all want stalkers, but we want stalkers that pay us, to be straight up with you.
Right.
We really want, if you're going to stalk me, at least buy one of my products. But you have basically an empire, I would say, in terms of what you built between bass lessons, between knowledge about the industry, being a producer. I did a deep dive into your website and I was absolutely stunned because even though I know what you're about and I've read and followed you, listened to some of your music, I did not go deep into what you've built. And so what I love to start with at the beginning is just how did you see yourself here? Let's say just, 15, 20 years ago. Did you imagine this moment when you would be at this point in your career, or was this something you always saw coming, or is this something like you look back and maybe say, wow, like I did when I looked at all your stuff?
Absolutely not. To answer that question, I didn't see all of this. The funny part, the majority of the stuff I'm doing now, I would have probably, the older me would have strayed away from most of this stuff. When I went to college, I hated the idea of teaching. I hated everything associated with it. It's like I wanted to do performance and, play. And being from where I'm from, I didn't know anything about musicians traveling the world and that kind of thing, and being able to even have a career in music. If you're from where I'm from, and I do share some of this in the book, if you're from where I'm from, the jobs to pick is probably like truck driving, nursing, school teacher, furniture, factory worker, which nothing is wrong with those jobs, but I had no interest in that. So all that being said, I had no idea that I would end up here. I knew I wanted to do something great. I knew I wanted to become something, be successful at something, but I had no idea that all of the different workings that I'm doing now, I had no idea that they would ever be here.
Well, you are now. And you mentioned the book, and I want to make sure so back. I probably already talked about it in the intro, but 10 Ways to Success, The Working Musician is your new book.
Yes.
And in it, I've had the pleasure of reading the draft copies as you were working on it. It was amazing back then. And then when I got the final copy, it was even more amazing. And I think without giving away too much of the book, you do tell your story. And I would love for you to just those people who've never heard of you or have seen and heard you, maybe but didn't know the real you. Can you give them kind of like the 30-second elevator speech about who you are and what you do? Because I think once they read the book, like they're going to get so much out of that. But you just kind of alluded to it, like you mentioned what people thought about doing in your days growing up and how you ended up in the music world. So can you just give them like a summary of like how what you do and how you got there?
Yeah, basically I'm an all-in entrepreneur, musician, and all things music. Everything I'm doing is kind of in some form or fashion related to music, whether it's the speaking, whether it's the playing, the music production, the songwriting, all of these different things. But they are all gifts that I've honed from an early age. I mean, I was writing songs probably at the age of 15. My mom is a musician, brother is a musician, mom is a songwriter. We all write. And so it was never something that we actually thought of as a living. It's just something we just did. We just naturally did. And it's something that I just started honing those particular skills. And through trial and error and going throughout my life's journey, I found myself in different situations, learning from these different situations. And I created something that's been able to help now sustain me and my family.
Well, there's a key word that you've built something. And that's kind of where I'm headed at in terms of my mindset, even as I'm talking to you and kind of thinking, okay, well, what do people need to know about you and what do they need to know about this book and what you have to offer that would help them to build something, right? Because I'll be very transparent right here. I'm speaking to you. We're on video and podcast. You guys can't see it, but we're sitting in our offices. I've got my, little setup behind me with my book and, little things that remind me of the book that I wrote. You were sitting in your studio with your basses behind you. So we kind of are like in our environment, right? Mm-hmm. We've built these places for us. There's somebody, I'm pretty sure listening, who's haven't even built a studio, has never even thought about building up their website, has never even considered the idea of being an entrepreneurial musician. You use that word entrepreneur. Yeah. So take me back to the days before the entrepreneur came out. So take me back to those moments where you were like either just a musician. I hate to say that word, just a musician, but you know what I mean? Yeah. What are the skills that started to present themselves that you might be able to do the whole thing, the lessons, the teaching, the websites, back when you were doing just one thing? Like, what was the pivot? What was the moment that like you start realizing you could like spread out your wings and do a little more?
I think it started for me. I started teaching lessons, man. I had to still be a teen, living at home with my mom. I would teach lessons to like the neighborhood musicians, people that were just trying to learn different stuff like bass, piano. I was teaching bass, piano, and guitar to just surrounding people that knew me. I'm from a small town, so everybody knew everybody. And so, Peggy and them son, they over there, he can give you some lessons. So that kind of thing. So it was something that I started like as a summer thing one summer when I was at home, and I started kind of teaching people then, and I got away from it. I never really took it as a business because at that time I was still working for, I think I was doing like a Piggly Wiggly or something like that.
Come on, Piggly Wiggly. I'm sorry. Man. Just to be back right there. I'm sorry, everybody. Yeah. Growing up in the South, that I'm in Miami now, man. There's nothing close to a Piggly Wiggly.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. So yeah, thank you for that reminder of my childhood. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
I was a stalker there at Piggly Wiggly, bag boy and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I did. The culture that I was raised in, it's like I had two worlds. My dad's side of the family was more of the entrepreneur side. We didn't even know what that word means, let alone know how to spell it. So, but they were all truck drivers. They own their own trucks. They own their own businesses. So in the back of my mind, that whole entrepreneur thing was always there. My mom was always a go-getter. She was like the idea person. She would always just try something. I've always kind of known that about my mom. She would always try something, even to this day. She's like, they call her a hustler because she can just come up with anything and just like figure out ways to make money from doing stuff. So I think from both sides, I kind of pull that entrepreneurial thing in the back of my mind, not really knowing it, because all the while these people have always worked for other people. So it's kind of like that thing, you have it in your mind, well, I'm just get me a job, or I'll do this and I'll do that. But somewhere along the way, it's like you start looking at it. And I think the thing for me is, as I started beginning to get exposed to more stuff, this is around the time I moved to Atlanta. I went to college, and I transferred to the University of North Alabama. And after transferring there, I came to do an internship at Doppler Studios. Now, if anybody is familiar with Doppler Studios in Atlanta, at that time, it was like the premier studio in Atlanta, like one of the premier studios. I mean, Usher would just walk in there on a random. It was stuff like that. You would just see everybody in there. So needless to say, you're seeing all these people that look like me who are entrepreneurs, are people who own their own stuff, or people who have made it, so to speak. And from where I'm from, I hadn't seen any of that before. So this was a big culture shock for me, but it started opening up my mind. And later I would land like different situations in terms of gigs and stuff, and start being exposed to more stuff that opened my mind to see more successful people. So now that entrepreneur thing is kind of being, it's being tickled again. So it's like, wait a minute, I'm working doing this, because at the time, most people don't know that I share this in the book as well. But when I first moved to Atlanta, I had my CDL. I was driving a truck, so I was, driving an 18-wheeler during the day, and I was doing my internship in the evenings. And so I'm seeing all these people making their own money, and I'm struggling trying to, I'm one payment away from being out on the street. And I'm like, wait a minute, something has to change. So I didn't kick it off right away. But in my mind, I'm just trying to put it together, seeing what skills do I have. This is before YouTube became a thing, and so, little by little, just not to drag this out, but little by little, I started just kind of putting things together. And eventually I got into the lessons that kind of opened up the entrepreneurial thing. Around the same time, I started creating my own album. And so that's the whole production thing in itself, because up to that point, you're waiting on, this as a producer, you're waiting on that call from an artist. I think over time, I had started learning how to take matters into my own hands instead of waiting for somebody to give me an opportunity. Long story short, to bring all of that home, at each stage of my life, I started learning how to be resourceful and start taking matters into my own hand and start creating opportunities for myself. Because being in a big city like Atlanta, everybody's here to eat. It's like nobody's here doing this for a hobby. People love what they do, but they're here to eat. So it's going to be, if you're not the best of the best, they're probably not going to call you. It's just that simple. And if you're not somebody who has a great relationship with the guys, you're probably not going to get called. So rather than me sit around and keep waiting for somebody to give me an opportunity, I started finding ways to create my own.
Well, that's an amazing moment. That's an amazing message. That's what we're looking for. That you didn't wait, but there are actually three things. And I told you I'm a very ADD kind of a interviewer, so I'm going to try to go in three different directions at once. So I hope I don't mess you up. You mentioned the skill and the relationships first. I heard that because you said if you don't have the skill or the ability, they're not going to call you, right?
Yeah.
But that's one thing we haven't touched on. But obviously, for you to be in these arenas, you had to have worked on your craft. And you say that, you talk about that in the book as well, about the actual skill. you couldn't be teaching lessons if you didn't have something to teach, if you hadn't followed through getting yourself to the highest level possible as a musician that you could get to, so that people would actually respect you, and then obviously, call you for the gig, and call you for the studio. And then you mentioned the relationships. So I think I wanted to piggyback there first before I go to the entrepreneurial side, because again, I try to imagine where someone's stuck. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the musician who is first saying, well, I can't even build anything because I'm either don't feel like I'm good enough, or I don't know the right people. I'm in a small town, or I don't have connections, right? No one's putting me on. So what would you say to the musician who's first struggling with that side of feeling like they're good enough or worthy enough to get the gig before they get to the entrepreneurial side?
Well, that's definitely a good point. And that's something I definitely struggle with, because location is and it is not important. And I'll try to unpack that. But the biggest thing is your mindset is going to be the biggest determining factor of everything. I was in Atlanta still with a Mississippi mindset with it, and not to talk bad about my Mississippi people, but I'm saying that in terms of the mindset that I had when I lived in Mississippi. Just because I changed locations, it didn't change my mindset. So I'm just a country boy in a big city, still acting like a country boy. And that was stopping certain things from happening for me. And it was also causing people to take advantage of me because they could see my potential and I couldn't. So they were taking advantage of my potential and they knew the benefit of what I had to offer. But because I'm still thinking like just good old boy from back home, because I couldn't see myself the way that everybody else saw me, it caused me to miss out on certain opportunities that could have benefited me and moved me forward. So the best thing I would tell someone who's struggling with that, you are good enough. Nobody can really tell you how much you hold inside of you, because that part of your book hasn't been open yet. You haven't written that chapter to show people. Like nobody could have said I'm a great author 10 years ago, or nobody could have told me that you're going to be a great speaker 15 years ago, because they don't see that. That hasn't been shown to them yet. So it's hard for someone to validate your potential when they haven't even seen it. So it's on you to be able to validate everything that's inside of you. So that's going to cause you to do a lot of self-searching in terms of figuring out who you are, really spending time with God, finding out, not only just spending time reading the word and that kind of thing, but spend some time learning about who you are, read some books, follow. One of the things I done learned about the business that I'm doing, success leaves clues. That's a quote that is not original to me, but success leaves clues. So a lot of the things that we're trying to do, we don't have to reinvent the wheels. You can just simply ask questions. Ask people questions. You'll be surprised how many people are willing to give you the information. Case in point, I reached out to you and asked you about writing a book. I reached out to several other people, and one of the things I'm learning, people are going to either be able to, and a good friend of mine taught me this when I started getting endorsements. Musical endorsements and that kind of thing. He's like, dude, you just have to ask. People are going to either say yes or they're going to say no, but you can't be afraid to ask. And I think one of the biggest things holding musicians back, one of the biggest things is we're afraid to ask. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid because of that whole perfectionist mentality. And I talked about this in my live yesterday on YouTube, but because of that perfectionist nature, most musicians are afraid to be rejected because we have put this image in our mind. Everything has to be perfect. Practice makes perfect. Before I present it, it has to be perfect. So because of that, it causes us not to move until we feel like we've perfected everything. But the problem with that, you will never perfect anything. Exactly. You will get close, but there are always going to be some tweaks. So you have to get to that place where you're okay with where it is you are and accept that and move on with it. And just know that I'm going to put the work in and I'm going to grow as I go. So that's my response to that.
That was definitely worthy of an offering plate right there. It was one, man. So no, I'm laughing to myself and just saying, like, no wonder I'm motivated. I want to go to one of your seminars now. I want to go and fix my mindset. But I'm so glad, especially again, we never know when people are going to hear this. I like to create, as you were talking marketing speak for a second, I like to create evergreen content. But we know most of people are going to be hearing this in 2020.
Yeah.
So for you to be saying this message at a time that 95% of in-person events is still, non-starter, is not going to happen. We're still in this limbo. It shows your understanding of, I think going back to what you said about the mentality that you had moving to Atlanta. Excuse me, so sorry. Having that mentality and not changing it when you got to the new location. So I've said this in my own family. Just us moving to a different place is not going to change our circumstances if we don't change the way we think. We're just going to take our problems wherever we go.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing with the pandemic. If the pandemic erases tomorrow, if the virus, if we have a vaccine that's perfectly 100% effective tomorrow, but you don't change your mindset, you're going to have the same problems you had pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you letting people know that it's all about making sure that you talk to yourself and, like the Bible says, encourage yourself. You really still hold the keys to that. And it's so powerful, so encouraging. So thank you for sharing that. So now let's move on, because you mentioned the skill and the mindset really is the main thing. So now that they have done that, can you walk us through, without giving away too much, can you give us just maybe one or two of the concepts? Because your book is called The Working Musician. Clearly, you're talking about the actions you take, the things you actually do. When I read it, the first thing I said is like, this is so right on the money, practical. Like, you can take this right now and simply take the end of the chapter, take an action step, and just go do it. And in 5 minutes, you can be farther along than you were as a musician, or even as a creative. We're talking to musicians and creatives and freelancers and everybody in all spheres. So even if you're not a musician, I think they get value out of your book. But can you, without giving away too much, just tell us a couple of the concepts, a couple of chapters that I know I've read that I loved. I want to know what were the concepts that you feel, if someone read it today and acted on it today, they could get a change in their life, in their musical journey.
I think and you probably would agree after reading, I think one of the biggest things in the book that I'm sharing is the power of resourcefulness. For me, that's been the number one thing, because I quote a good friend of mine again. He said, I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up a trust fund baby. So I didn't have the privilege when I grew up playing. Back in the day, I played guitar, was my first main instrument. Most people don't know that, but guitar, I'm a guitar player. And so for years, I played through a crate keyboard amp for years. My mom would play the keyboard. I would play just a guitar. I didn't even have any effects pedals. I had the reverb on. I don't know if you remember those crates.
Yeah.
Had the reverb on the amp. So I would turn the reverb up, and that was my effects for guitar. So that was it. That's all I had: a guitar, cable, and plugging into a crate keyboard amp. Even in that little lesson there, I was learning how to be resourceful. I didn't have effects pedals like everybody else had. I didn't get I think the first thing I had, somebody gave me a little Zoom pedal years later after I had been playing. And even that, I didn't use that much stuff out of it, but I had learned how to make the most of what I had. I grew up in a place where average income around that time was probably between 20 and 24,000 a year for the average family for where I grew up at. So you weren't making a lot of money. It's just, this is what it is. You have what you have. So you're going to learn to make the most of what you have. And my mom bought a Rogue bass out the musician's friend catalog, one of those $150, $200 basses. And that's why I started learning to play the bass on just a little cheap bass. But I never thought of it as this is cheap. I just thought of it, this is what I have. This is what I have to work with. So I'm saying all of that, and I don't hit on all of this in the book, but through all of those different pieces, I learned how to be resourceful. This is what I have to work with. Don't complain about what you have. I think it's a quote by Jim Rohn. I heard him say, don't complain about what you have, because what you have is all you have.
Wow.
It's so don't complain about what you have. This is all right. If this little car is all I have to get me to work, then I better make sure I take care of this little car. Don't sit and complain about this car every day, how bad this car is. If you're not going to buy another car today or tomorrow or next week, the best thing you can do is go to your little wash thing and wash it up and armor all the seats, put your little air freshener in there and just ride the best you can. Make sure you got plenty of oil and water, and make sure you're being resourceful to use what you have to get to where you need to go. And those are the things that I use. These are some of the tools, as you'll read throughout the book, that I continue to do. I use things that I had available to me. Was it perfect? No. But there was always a lesson that I could take away from each different thing that I use. And I shared this yesterday, and I spoke yesterday. So you're saying kind of give some steps. 3 points, it'll be a bonus point, but 3 points I would say, if you want to start moving forward in this season, if you are a musician or wherever you find yourself being a creative, you're going to have to do 3 things: goal, plan, execution. So the first thing you want to be able to do is set a realistic goal of what it is you want to do. No matter how big it is or whatever it is, just have a goal. It's another quote that says, you'll never hit a target that you don't have. So being able to have a target, being able to have something that you're aiming at when you set that goal, this is where I'm trying to go. Because most of us, we just wander aimlessly through life waiting on the next call as a musician. I'm just waiting for somebody to call me. Man, what you got going on this week? Depending on who called. That's a bad mindset to have. As a working musician, especially as being exposed, especially during this time, how bad that mindset was, because back in the day when everything was popping, you the hot stuff and everybody's always calling you. That was cool. But now that doesn't work, because most of it, like you said, 95% of all the venues are shut down. And so if you're working as a live musician, you're finding yourself kind of in a funk right now because nobody is calling. So now you have to reinvent yourself. Start with setting a goal. This is what I want to do. I read this book by Dean Graziosi, Millionaire Success Habits. He talked about this concept of reverse engineering a year, like going in a year into the future, writing out where you see yourself like a year from now. All right. So I see myself earning, I'm just saying something. I see myself earning 7 figures. I see myself owning multiple companies. I see myself hiring musicians and so on and so forth. So now what I do in terms of reverse engineering, I go all the way back to September of this year and see what steps will I take to get me to September of 2021 being in these things that I said I'm going to do. So you reverse engineer. I set goals. And so now the next thing, I come up with a plan of how I'm going to get there. That's my reverse engineering there. So how am I going to get to September 2021? Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to set up me an e-commerce site. I'm going to do something where I can start seeing myself earning this. Or what am I going to do to come up with multiple businesses? Well, I'm going to find out what things am I good at? What am I naturally good at? What things can I do? What things can I start implementing now? Can I do something today that will make me $10?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to start doing that today by planning. All right. So now I have my goals. I got my aim where I'm trying to go. I'm pulling back with my plan. And the next thing I got to do, execution. Get busy. And the bonus thing that I said I'll add with that, with especially us as musicians being perfectionists, is that we're good with setting goals. Just think about a producer. We know what we want this song to sound like. We might not have all the stuff planned out, but we'll start on the song. We'll start the beat. You know what I'm saying? Or we'll start the melody, whatever your process is of creating a song. You start it. You'll get in there and you'll start recording some parts. You'll call up a few friends. Hey, man, I need you to put some drums on that. But the problem that we have, we'll even do the whole execution part. The problem we have, we won't finish. Going back to that perfectionist thing.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. It's not good enough. So what you have to do after execution, you have to set a delivery date. You have to do that, which means when I just said earlier, let's go a year into the future and say, all right, by September such and such, this is when I want to be done with this. You know what I'm saying? So I want to be done by this time. That means no matter if it's not finished up to my standard, I have to be done. And if we're talking music, you got to be done mid-August or early August or mid-July. So you have time to have everything done and right so you can release in September. So you already know that, well, I don't have 12 months to do this. I got like 10 months to do this. So you set yourself a realistic target date so you make yourself finish with whatever it is you're trying to do. And so in my opinion, that's how you get stuff done.
That's unbelievable teaching. Again, I see people lining up for the seminar. We need to get them the website right now, the registration link. I mean, because you're saying it with such clarity. And what I feel, again, I think I'll add my little piece is not necessarily anything in terms of what you're saying. It's like a whole nother side of it, but the confidence to move forward, the confidence to take that step, the saying to yourself, what's the worst that could happen is nothing. And I think we were talking a lot about the books that we've been reading. And one of the things I love is in one of the books, every entrepreneur needs to read The 4-Hour Work Week. And one of the things he says a lot, Tim Ferriss, is just take the worst case scenario, just write out and kind of like the opposite. Like, what's the absolute worst that could happen? Kind of goes back to what you said about resourcefulness. And could you work your way out of this? If everything failed, could you work your way out? Well, yeah, I could sell this. I could figure this out. Well, what if that happened? Well, I could probably figure this out. And he says, like almost reverse engineering, the worst possible thing that could happen. And you can still plan your way out of it. And we all know the sky is probably not going to fall. Yeah, there might be a pandemic, but there's so many negatives that are not going to happen. Mm-hmm. We talk ourselves, like you said, perfectionism, we talk ourselves out of our ability to do things because we assume the worst.
Yeah.
And we assume that it's not going to work. Or we assume that, it's not going, no one's going to buy it. Or we assume that, no one's going to pay attention. And then we just stop there and we never step forward because we don't have the confidence to take the steps and take the actions that you're talking about. And so I hope everybody that's listening is hearing the confidence in your voice. And I want to ask you one quick thing. I always like to do like a little back and forth between the top and the bottom of your career so that people know that you haven't always been at the top. What would be a mountaintop experience for you in terms of musically? It could be an artist, could be a gig, could be a performance, a mountaintop experience where you said, I can't believe I got here. So maybe there's like one of those moments, even now, maybe it's right in the book. But just give me a mountaintop experience where, like you said, wow, I didn't see this coming, but now I've seen this artist or I played on this stage. And then maybe give me on the opposite, the low point that you're like, I can't believe I got here. And you had to work your way out of it. So I always like to give musicians and creators that are listening that kind of picture of your life so you can kind of, so no one says, he doesn't know what I mean. He doesn't know what I feel. No one could say that. So can you just give me like one of the top moments that you could say, I loved it. And then one of those moments at the low point where you're like, man, like, how am I going to make it out of it? But you still did. We'll get back to our talk with Jermaine in just a second, but I am so excited to tell you about this. If you are an event coordinator, a musician, an artist, anyone who creates live events and sells tickets, you need to listen to this little message. I use a platform called Ticket Tailor to produce and sell tickets to my events. That includes my live stream show. We've been producing a live stream show for the past 6 months since the pandemic, and it's been amazing. And we've been able to monetize it and sell tickets to our event using Ticket Tailor. Here's why it's exciting for you. Ticket Tailor has graciously created a free plan for anyone who's producing online events. So musicians, creators, people who are doing virtual shows. If you want to sell tickets to your shows, that means you can do it with no ticket fees charged by Ticket Tailor. So the only fees you would see from your tickets would be from the processor, whoever you use for your credit cards, PayPal, or so on. But Ticket Tailor is absolutely free up through 2020, the end of 2020. So you really need to take advantage of this if you are trying to monetize or create income from your shows online, your virtual shows. I teach you how to do this in one of our courses that we're building. But right now, I just want you to take advantage of this offer. So go to godandgigs.com/ticket tailor. That's Taylor like a clothing tailor, TAILOR. godandgigs.com/ticket tailor. Go to the link in our show notes, tap that and join their plan. And once again, There is no charge if your event is virtual, and their fees for in-person events are very low and very reasonable as well, way lower than the competition that I've used in the past for creating my ticket sites. You can build up sites. You can get everything you need for your live event by using Ticketailor. Check that out. Take advantage of this free plan, again, up through 2020, the end of 2020. If you produce online events, it's a virtual event, your ticketing would be free from Ticketailor. Check it out, guidedgigs.com/Ticketailor. Now let's get back to this great conversation with Jermaine Morgan.
Wow. I gotta, there's a lot of moments for me, on both sides. I'll say most people, well, they don't know me at all. I don't know. So, but I played for New Birth, the famous New Birth Missionary Baptist Church under Bishop Eddie Long for 12 years. And throughout that whole experience, that in itself was a mountaintop experience for me, because when I went there, that was like the church in the world to be playing at, and to be going there and being the guy that followed behind one of my heroes, like Daryl Freeman on bass, like following up behind him. And in my mind, I'm a nobody. And it's like, who is this guy? Like, we just got through hearing Daryl that played with Kevin Vaughn, that played with, Marvin Sapp and everybody in gospel. And so I'm this guy that comes behind this. That experience and some of the personal experiences of being on that stage, being on that platform, some of the things that I was exposed to, some of the artists that I was able to play for or accompany, or some of the pastors, people that I've watched on TV growing up, celebrities. And it was literally every week was a who's going to show up this week. So much so that it was the norm. Like, who are you going to be hanging out with this week? Like my first Sunday playing at the church, Israel was there. And talk about panic mode. I didn't know all of his stuff, and New Birth was one of those places. It's kind of like they expect musicians just to be able to play. So if they just get on the stage randomly without a rehearsal and call out a song, they expect you to know it, because that's just, you're on that level now. So you're expected to perform as if you're on that level. So yes, to say the least, I was panicking, but I say all of that because you just never know what giant was going to walk in. One week it'll be a Richard Smallwood that walks in, and it'll be somebody else that walks in. Tyler Perry in the audience. Steve Harvey is sitting over. It's just the list would go on and on as to people who would just show up, and that's just one experience. So I would say a highlight for me. That's one of many. Sure, in terms of career, as a bass player only. That's probably one of the highlights. And I've traveled with artists and stuff like that, but that's probably one of the highlights. Being able to regularly play in a place like that was so prestigious. And not only that, being able to later become a music director there was like huge in terms of, wow, I never thought I would be here. I never even imagined. I didn't even think I was good enough as a bass player to hold this seat, let alone be the music director one day at this place. So I think that was a high for me. One of my many lows was probably being at Doppler Studios, knowing what I had and feeling like I was beneath like everybody that came in there. It's just, you felt kind of worthless because I was in that position then. I don't think at the time I was working for any church. I wasn't working for anybody musically. And it's just like, you're just trying to become noticed by somebody. You're green, you're hungry. And it's just like, you feel, when I first moved to Atlanta, I literally felt like a nobody. In that first year of me being in Atlanta, it was a tough year. Most people don't know. It's like, I was literally, when I say probably one check away from being homeless, I'm dead serious. I had family, but that thing didn't work out as cool as I thought it was going to work out. So I was literally on my own. I was thrust into adulthood when I moved to Atlanta, because before then I was living with my parents, even though I was in college. So this was a completely new experience for me. So being here in Atlanta and being in this new city and experiencing all of this stuff, and then feeling like a nobody after you spent all of these years and learn all of this stuff. And now it feels like your skills mean nothing because nobody calls you, nobody knows who you are. And because you're in such a competitive place, your being good at home is like mediocre here.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, I got to start all the way back over. But how I worked through that was that third word. I literally worked my behind off. I started being honest with myself, not just putting myself down. It was a process. And I don't want to make this sound like it was, man, I just had the Rocky Balboa moment and I just started, it was no flight of stairs that I ran up when I got it was like years of finding myself and really just listening and grabbing and studying all these different musicians that I could study to start growing and improve my skills. Because even when I got the job at New Birth, I didn't feel like I was good enough for that position.
Wow.
I couldn't keep up. These guys was coming in there. I don't know if you know Dario Edgecombe. That was my music director at the time. And Dario is an amazing bass player himself that most people don't know about. He played on like Sunday Best for like 2-3 seasons. But he's an amazing bass player. So I'm intimidated. I'm coming in there playing behind all these huge guys that I've seen on all these records and always feeling like the weakest link in the band. So you're having this mountaintop experience, but yet you're feeling like you're still on the valley looking up.
Wow.
And my brother had this quote. I don't know if it's his, but I like it. And he said, it'll be a terrible thing to be on top of the mountain and not know you're up there. Man. So some of the times you can find yourself in your mountaintop experiences, but your mindset still has you in the valley, and you don't even realize that you climbed up that high. You can't look down and see where you are because you're too busy still trying to look up at everybody else. And that's where I was. And so I was working really, really hard. And in all of that work, I ended up surpassing my own goals of where I was trying to get. And all the rest is history. I'm still working now. It's not like I've arrived. I don't want to give that off at all because I haven't. But I just continue to work. And I've kept my head down and I keep working. That's all I can honestly say. And that's, if you're in this season, if you're in this pandemic, as all of us are, that's the best advice I can give you, even as an entrepreneur, because nothing is promised, nothing is certain. You just have to keep your head down and you just have to keep working. And you just have to keep moving forward. Like going back, a lot of people, and I one of the things I love to do is be transparent with people, because I don't want to come across as if, look at him, he's done this and he's done that, and I got to get there one day. 2019, I stepped out on faith and I left the church that I had been at that really kind of, I think, set me up on a platform to help grow my career. I didn't really use the church to grow my career, but it
I did. Yeah. No, I wanted to stop you real quick, only because when you say all this is such gold and such transparency, and I always like to make sure people hear my heart as well, because I don't hear anything in your voice or your delivery that anybody would think that you were anyway using, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's not arrogant, but there's nothing in there. Like you exude humility. That's what I'm trying to say. So as you're saying this, I almost like telling you, no, like I don't see a single listener right now on their headphones or in their car or whatever saying, man, he just like you said at the beginning, had a silver spoon of music put in. Like, no, like you literally explained your work ethic, the hustle from your parents, and you're walking it out. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but just that was burning in my heart. My head. It's like, dude, just don't, it's funny that this is not a counseling or coaching or anything, because you do that as well. But I almost felt like in my coach head said, make sure none of that talk is seeping back into it, because it's almost like you kept saying it. And we almost like we said at the beginning of the interview before we came on, you speak what you want, you see, and you see what you ended up seeing it. Like literally I said something before this interview started, and I saw it like literally 2 seconds later.
Yeah.
So life and death is still in the power of the tongue. I'm going off on a tangent. I knew that was going to happen.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, and that's helpful because I mean, like I said, the point I was making is still a process. That's one of the biggest things I was making, because you said something earlier when we were talking about the just kind of executing and being able to get it done, and you piggyback off to some of the stuff I said. Well, one of the things I was going to mention in that, there's always this feeling that loves to return, especially with us as perfectionists, that people who sell cars have figured out how to master it. Yeah. And I think it's one of the things, don't quote me, but I think it's called like cognitive dissonance, that kind of thing. And what it is that reassuring that you have done the right thing after you've done it. Because even after, like, I've released several songs, I produced records for other people and all this kind of stuff. And once you do it, you get it done, that initial feel, if you've ever experienced any pushback from people or a lack of support from people, sometimes when you get ready to create something new as a creative, and we are always creating something new, that thought loves to get in your mind. Oh, you know they're not going to support it. Oh, you know they're not going to get behind you. I mean, they'll support him. They're not going to support you. So it's like those thoughts love to get in your head, but you have to reaffirm, kind of like that car salesman. After you sign those papers, what do? They don't let you just walk out of the office and get in your car and drive off. No, they come and pat you on your back, tell you how much you're going to love this car, man. This car is going to look real good on you, man. Your wife is going to love this. Your family, you're going to be able to take all these. They pump your head with all this stuff to reaffirm you that you just made a great decision. Just like a home owner, they're going to, when they sell you your house, they're going to tell you all this stuff about your house, how much you're going to love it. Send me some pictures. They want to affirm that you made a right decision. So if they know how to do that in the sales world, why don't we do that for ourselves?
Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You just put on, that's exactly what I was trying to like kind of put into words, that we are our worst enemy oftentimes. And the fact is that most of these goals that we've set for ourselves are literally within our hands or within our reach. And we kind of, the phrase that started to pop into my head when you're talking about working so hard was, I go biblical a second, and I was thinking of Jacob working for Rachel and working at 7 years. And then he got to that 7 years, and then, wait, you switched the bait and switch? Wait, I thought I had this. Yeah. And then you got to go work another 7 years for the same thing. But I think the Bible says it didn't feel like a day to him. Like he kept it going, even when he had those moments of doubt. Probably, I'm sure he had some. I don't know what Jacob was thinking, but I'm pretty sure he was like, "Man, this ain't working. Like I've been here working and slaving away." But the fact that he kept it going, even whenever things got messed up a little bit, kind of reminds me of what you're explaining, which is, you can do it. It's out there. The goal is there. It's right there. Yeah. But it's our decision whether or not to keep pushing forward, or whether we're going to self-talk ourselves out of it. This has been an amazing talk, man. We could go on for 2 hours on this. You know how we can get. We had like a 2-hour conversation before. We're talking about business and life and entrepreneurship and music. So I'm so glad we can share this with you. But I want to make sure that there are 2 things I would love to make sure as we wrap it up. Okay. One is we talked a little bit about, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, how the faith that has kept you going. And so I don't think we've had to even like bring it out explicitly, because it's so ingrained in you. But just can you talk a little bit about like the spiritual component, like what is it about your faith that has helped you in your career to this point? Because there's got to be many of those other valley moments, like you said, when you felt lost in Doppler Studios or something. What is it about your relationship with God that kind of is the most important part of you being able to make it to the point that you've made it now?
I think that's been the driving factor for me. Just with my decisions, just with certain things I've accepted, certain things I wouldn't accept. I mentioned slightly in the book about this, even getting into the whole entrepreneurial side of creating something for myself, because there were certain calls I didn't want to keep accepting. There were like gigs that I would do, and I think I read some of this even in your book. There were certain gigs that I would do that felt like, to me, it was causing me to compromise who I was. And it's like you're almost forcing yourself to be something, to be comfortable with something that you're not naturally comfortable with in order to appease the artist or appease the audience, because you got to sell it. As a musician, you have to sell it on stage. And I felt like I don't want to be fake, and I don't want to be up here selling something that I wouldn't buy myself. So if I'm having to compromise who I am, it's like, no, I can't do this. And if I'm not going to get these calls, I have to create something that is going to substitute for these calls so that I don't have to keep accepting these gigs that I don't want to do. And so to me, that's how a lot of when I started creating the courses and stuff online, that's how a lot of that came about. And because of that, I started looking at myself, well, what do you do? What are you naturally doing that you're naturally good at that you could be selling? Because online has created a major platform, but to the point, my faith has driven a lot of those decisions. And I found myself being more creative and being more in touch with what's inside of me. The closer I get to God, the more I try to go after him, the more, not to get super deep for nobody, but the more I try to seek his face, because we mentioned earlier before we got on here about me getting up early. That's really the reason for my getting up early. The real root of it, I got young kids, 3, 6, and 8. So, my wife and I was married, several years before we even had kids. So I was the dude, like, I didn't want no kids when I was younger. Like, I did not want kids. But, as we got married, we got a little older, that changed. But as the kids came, I noticed I started getting grumpy as my daughter started to get a little older. She's 2 or 3, because kids are demanding when they get up.
Oh, yeah.
So you're being woke up out of your sleep. Somebody's fussing at you immediately when you get, I want this, I want that, I want that. Yeah, I mean, my real parents on here will be able to kind of know exactly where I'm coming from. As much as you want to be a great parent, if you be honest, it's like, man, come on now, y'all get on my nerves. So I would notice that happening over and over for me. I was becoming really, really cranky when I wasn't able to start my day off the way I was used to starting it off. And so I was being very negative, very pessimistic throughout my day. So I'm like, when I finally saw myself in that and I realized I was doing that, I said, I got to take charge of this thing. So I literally started getting up earlier, spending time with God, spending time praying, spending time getting into his word. And through me getting up early, all these different ideas started being birthed, like all of this stuff. And I noticed I would have more done by 10 a.m. than the average person would get done in the whole day, just simply by me making the choice to get up and give God that first time of the day first. Like, let me give him this, and before I respond to anybody, before I respond to any text, before I go fix anybody some food, or if I beat my wife up or whatever, if I beat her waking up, let me make sure I'm saying that right. He said he beat his wife. No. I mean, if I wake up before my wife, that's that bad Southern English speaking. So when I started taking charge of my day and giving God first, that's when it started to flow. It became a flow. And so now you get into this zone, and there's some mornings I don't want to get up. I struggle now. I hit that snooze. But for the most part, I'm in a zone, and I feel off if I don't get up early and just kind of get into my thing of what I do. It's like, I feel off. I hadn't talked to God today. I haven't spent any time with God today. So, and Proverbs 3:5-6, in all your ways acknowledge him, he'll direct your paths.
Yep.
It's hard to acknowledge God when you don't hear him, because you're not spending any time with him. Going back to God and gigs, It's like, it's hard to acknowledge someone when I don't recognize that they're there until Sunday and Wednesday, and maybe a little bit for rehearsal. If we have a moment in rehearsal, he'll get a little time then. But if I don't regularly make time for God, there's one of my favorite verses now that I have. It's like, teach me to do your will, O God, and let your good spirit lead me on level ground. It's like, I want him to show me the way that I should go, because I could be doing the right thing or be doing something that seems right.
Yep.
And the end is not what I expected for it to be. You could be doing something really good and you're not being productive at the right thing. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to cause my children to fail because I don't give them anything to build on. We build on the shoulders of where our parents left off. Yeah. And so when my son and my daughters, they start to build their own thing, I want them to have a great foundation, that they're not digging themselves up out of a pit. They're already standing on top of something solid. So part of my grind, part of my hustle is to make sure that I'm leaving something. The Bible says a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure my grandkids are straight, man.
Man, beautiful. Oh, I cannot put any more claps on it again. I feel like we should be passing the offering plate and or the registration link. We're just going to keep saying the registration link because I mean, whenever it's coming, we need to get everybody signed up for it. And finally, to wrap this up, I always like to try to give up a kind of like you've given so much wisdom. I can't imagine like what else you could add to it, but I always try to bring it personal. So let's just put yourself in the moving to Atlanta moment. I always try to say, what would you say to yourself? Like let's say, I guess you're saying your past self. I don't know how people do it, how they word it, but let's just put somebody else in your position, right? Somebody else who just moved, somebody else who's in that position, feeling low, feeling like, they don't have what it takes. They're being ignored, or their skill level's just not quite there. They're in the middle of a big, a lot of great people, or maybe new birth, whatever you want to put that person, that was you. We're going to make it you, but somebody else. Mm-hmm. What would you tell that person? What advice would you say to that person who is where you were?
First thing, you are enough. And that's a simple statement, but there's so much power in those 3 words that I think we don't realize because we speed past them. You are enough. If I could go back to my 24-year-old self moving to Atlanta, I would probably look me straight in the face and probably punch me in the stomach. So I make sure I got my own attention. Like, dude, you are enough. You won't even, and I tell you, I'll share this, and it's a prophecy that was given to me by one of my heroes. And I'm going to share this prophecy with you if you're watching this. But he said, this is Jonathan Dubose Jr. I'm a good friend of mine to this day. But at the time, it's like he was just a hero. He was just like one of them myths, one of the legends that I never knew. But I ordered, I'll share this story. Hopefully it encourages. But I ordered some of his product off of his website at the time. Me and my wife were newly married. I was newly at new birth, experiencing some wins and some fails, but mostly some wins because, I'd never been here before. And I bought some stuff off of his website and I left a message for whatever reason. And I thought I was calling like an office or something like that. I didn't know that I was calling like his direct line. And so I go to church this particular night because I ordered it early during the day and I didn't get an answer or whatever. I just left a message telling them who I was. This is what I bought. And I get out of church that night, and lo and behold, it's Jonathan Dubose talking on my voicemail. And like, I'm in the parking lot, like going nuts. I'm like, man, this is Jonathan Dubose, man. He called my phone. Folks looking at me like, what's wrong with this dude? So I call him. He told me to call him back. So I call him back. I'm driving in my car, getting ready to go back home, and he's in the parking lot, talking to me as I'm in the parking lot, prophesying to me. He's like, Jermaine Morgan, like anybody that knows him, he's going to give you a prophecy before you get off the phone with him. So he's giving me this prophecy that seemed way too big. He said to me, and I say this to you, he said, everything you've done up to this point is going to seem small in comparison to what God does for you in your career. And at that point, I think I had just played, we had just did Chastain Park Gospel Goes Classical with Juanita Bonham, Byron Cage, and Myron, what was his name? Myron Williams. So for me, that was like huge. I think I hadn't done a recording at that time, a live recording at that time, but like the Gospel Goes Classical thing was a huge, big symphony orchestra. I think it was Justin Gilbert on the piano. Yeah. And so it was like some giants that was there. So I was like, man, this is huge. This is Chastain Park. So, and I'm at New Birth currently playing for all these different artists. And when he said that, it was hard for me to grasp it. But sure enough, going back, and I even called him like last year and told him like, man, you were spot on, because all the stuff I had done at that point literally seems small in comparison to all the other stuff that God has revealed in me. So I will say that to you guys, if you're watching this and if you're in that low place, it's temporary. Mm. Allow that place to make you into who you are to become. Don't allow your current situation to define who you are. Allow that to make you into who you're going to be, because that's what we all need. We need the process. We need the process. Diamonds look like coal at first. Diamonds look like coal. So it's easy for people to just skip. If you're in that environment, it's easy for people to just pass by them if they don't really know what a diamond in the works look like. You just pass by. If I were to go to a diamond mine, I'd probably pass 1,000 of them because I don't know what they look like.
Yep.
But that right person who mines diamonds, they will know what it looks like, and they'll know how to handle it correctly in order to get that brilliance out of that diamond. So I would tell you, while you're in this stage, while you're in that cold stage or whatever you call it, just know that you're enough and keep grinding. You keep pecking away at your own stuff until you start to shine. And when it's your moment, when it's the right time, in due season, when it's the right time, God will start revealing certain things for people to see what's on the inside of you, because it's not going to come out beforehand. Because if the character is not prepared for the success, you won't keep it.
That's it.
If your character is not prepared for your success, you won't keep it. So those are my words.
And you are literally, like I said, just shut the book right there, man. That is absolutely. I think what I might do, and I'm saying this, I'm doing shop talk in the middle of the podcast, but you mentioned the video, and I usually like reserve the videos for myself because I can rewatch them and get inspired anytime I want. That's very selfish of me. I may take that last little section and just give it to our mastermind because they need to hear that message.
Okay.
Before I even get the rest of it produced, because I want to make sure that people hear those words. People need to know that in this season is literally getting ready to catapult them to what they're coming through next. That they're being tried in the fire right now. To use that phrase. You talked about coal. I'm thinking about being refined as pure gold. Right. Yeah. Same process. It's not fun. It's not pretty, but you come out better than when you went in. Yeah. So Jermaine, this has been absolutely one of my favorite moments to finally talk to you face to face and to share your information. Just for the people who like to go old school and write down stuff, can you just tell them how to follow you, where to find your seminars, your base lessons, everything, your socials? Just tell them so they can either write it down or put it in their phones if they don't go to the show notes.
Okay. So the easy way for most of my stuff that you want to find, you can go to my website, JermaineMorgan.net, JermaineMorgan.net. And there you can find all of my social and everything. If you're on Instagram, you can follow me at JMorganBase, just like it sounds. And it's the same thing at Twitter. So you can find me in basically all of those places. And and I'm pretty active on YouTube. You can find my YouTube channel from my website, or simply just type Jermaine Morgan in the search on YouTube and a whole bunch of videos will pop up. I'm pretty easy to find online.
Well, I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for everything you're sharing in the book. Thank you for being the man of God you are, the father you are, the musician you are, the entrepreneur. I'm inspired by everything. I got a lot of work to do now, because now that you put a little fire into me and I've seen everything that's possible, I know I got some more work to do. And a lot of people that are listening and watching this are going to be inspired as well. So God bless you. Thanks. We got to do this again very soon, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, my friend, I hope you understand the depth and character and the wonderful, wonderful approach that you have just been opened up to by Jermaine Morgan. If you just apply any of these principles, any of these thoughts to your life, and especially if you pick up the book, you're going to find an incredible benefit, and you're going to be able to advance your career in a balanced, healthy, and profitable way. It's just the way things work. Like he said, success leaves clues, and he just left a ton of clues and breadcrumbs for us to follow. And so I'm so grateful for Jermaine. He's definitely one of us in our community. I hope to have him back very soon, either in a teaching seminar or a course or something else where he can share more knowledge with you. But in the meantime, you got to follow him. Check out all his links in our show notes or on our webpage. Just go check that out. It's godandgigs.com/83 if you want to find the webpage and you're listening on your app. And you can find all of those links there as well to follow Jermaine and keep up with everything he's doing. And I want to thank you once again for following us, keeping up with us. It's been an amazing journey, and this was just one more example of a connection that I am so glad I've made through God and Gigs. So if you want to stay connected with other creators like you, there's a lot of ways to do that. I would encourage you to join our creative community on Facebook. It's a free community. All you have to do is answer a couple of questions, make sure that we know you're a real person, and then you will be approved to join the creative community on Facebook. There are a lot of artists there who are talking, sharing ideas, sharing encouragement, helping each other with practical things and spiritual life there as well. So definitely check that out so you can be a part of that community. And if you want any information on some of the tools that we talked about today, we've mentioned mailing list, we've mentioned YouTube, we've mentioned making videos, all of those things you can find at godandgigs.com/toolkit. You can find that link as well, and a lot of the different apps that we use to help build this creative entrepreneur life, you can find there as well. So that's all. We've shared so much. I'm so thankful for Jermaine. Go check out the book. Definitely, we'll have a link for that as well on our recommended books page at godandgigs.com. Until next week, keep creating, keep focusing, keep creating great things. Stay inspired. And I am so happy, once again, that I can be a part of this journey with you. Take care. Be safe. See you next time.
Thanks for joining us here at the God and Gigs Show. Please leave us a review on iTunes, like our Facebook page, or visit godandgigs.com and tell us what you thought of this show. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, go create something amazing.